It's a very, very emotional journey when what's happening inside your body is so exposed on the outside.
Welcome to That's Derm Good. I'm Janelle Ball, and I'm excited to bring you thought-provoking conversations about biologics, specialty medications, treatments, and so much more. I'll be chatting with some amazing guests about access, affordability, and advocacy. You're really going to enjoy this show. This episode is sponsored by Dermavant. Welcome to That's Derm Good. Today, my guest is Kari Day. Kari is the director of training for a Columbus-based hospitality company. And Kari is with me today because she is also a patient. And I wanted to talk with you today about just your experience and your journey dealing with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. So today is such a pleasure to have you on the podcast, Kari, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and have a chance to talk about my experience with you.
Yes. So, okay, tell me a little bit about your journey and what led you to want to share your story with me.
Sure. So my journey started a little over 9 years ago. It was about 6 months before I actually had my son. I was pregnant at the time, and I started experiencing a lot of pain in my feet, my hands, my back. And as a result, I also started developing psoriasis. First, it started out small, just on the backs of my hands, maybe a little bit on my elbows, and it slowly started progressing. I thought maybe it had something to do with the pregnancy at the time, but it progressively got worse after I had my son. It led to multiple fractures in my feet over the next few years after having my son. And finally, my podiatrist actually advised me to seek a rheumatologist and say, hey, this isn't normal in somebody your age, combined with everything else going on. So she was the first one that pointed me in the right direction to saying, all of these symptoms seem to be coming together into one thing.
Wow. So, had you ever had any like skin issues before, like any psoriasis spots or anything growing up or anybody in your family?
I personally never had. My
Mhm.
grandfather on my dad's side did. He had it pretty progressive. My dad would have a little bit of psoriasis in his hairline and on his elbows when the weather would shift. I'm from Michigan. So when the weather got cold, his skin would get dry and he would have a little bit, and he treated it with some topical creams. Every once in a while, his doctor would give him a steroid shot and he'd be fine until the next season. So, not a huge family history. And me personally, I'd never experienced it until my pregnancy.
Wow. So, what was that experience like when you first went to the rheumatologist?
I actually sought a dermatologist first. I saw a few dermatologists. My experience with the first few dermatologists that I sought weren't really great. I was dismissed pretty early on as somebody that was kind of stressing myself out and making it worse. So I had three back-to-back dermatologists. I was living in Columbus and Clintonville at the time, and I traveled to Cleveland for one out of the three that I went to. And all three of them, I kid you not, tried to put me on an SSRI, saying that I was basically causing my skin to break out. And if I just relaxed a little bit more and I wasn't as stressed, that it would kind of clear up. They gave me different gels, different creams to put on my skin. And all the while it's getting worse. And they're telling me that if I really kind of didn't calm down about it, that it would just keep getting worse. So somehow amidst me having hands that were cracking and bleeding open and caring for my son, and at this point it had moved to my shins and my knees, and it was becoming a big problem. And I remember I went home one day and I just started crying to my husband. I said, I love my life. I'm not depressed. I'm not a crazy person here. Like something is happening with my body. I know my body. And my OB who delivered my son, she had a good friend who she recommended me to. And that was the fourth dermatologist that I went to. And I've been going to her for the last 7 years. And she hooked me up with a great rheumatologist. And within the first appointment, she said, this isn't caused by stress. This isn't caused by anxiety. We're going to get to the bottom of it. I went home crying for a different reason that day. So, such a relief.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because how much it affects your daily life. I mean, you were trying to take care of a baby at the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can imagine having to, change diapers and, just caring for your child and dealing with this. So, did you see majority of it on your skin, or was it more your joint pain that you were having the biggest issues with?
It was more my skin. From the time that, like I said, about 6 months prior to having my son until he was about 4-ish, it was primarily on my skin. I had fractured both of my feet multiple times during that period of time. I was in a walking boot caring for a young child, and none of the initial dermatologists wanted to refer me and go that next step to a rheumatologist. They just, your body changes after pregnancy. That's what I heard a lot.
Mm.
I work in an industry where I'm on my feet a lot. So it all made sense to them. So it took a really, really long time, but it was to the point where my hands and my elbows, I would cry in the shower, Obviously, being in the industry that I'm at, I'm around people a lot. I'm very social. I had one gentleman inform me that my hands looked like acid had been poured on them. My son, when he started speaking, he would point at my hands and he would go, Mama, ouchie, Mama, ouchie. And he would like touch my hands. And it's a very, very emotional journey when what's happening inside your body is so exposed on the outside.
Absolutely. So, when did you first realize that you needed to become your own advocate and to really tell the doctor, I need you to look into this, or, something's not right?
It was that third dermatologist that I went to in Cleveland. I had seen two in Columbus prior, and both times I left those offices, I was told one, I needed an SSRI for my anxiety surrounding all this so that I could calm down. The second was, we have this new product, we have this new cream that just came out. And by the third time I went, I started to feel as if I was, and I don't know this for a fact, and I don't want to assume any ill intentions by the physicians, but I got the feeling that I was kind of just being tested out for this new cream that they wanted to try from a drug rep. It was that third one that I drove all the way back to Columbus in tears because I was given another topical cream. I didn't want to spray stuff in my hair. I couldn't fully be on the ground playing with my son when my hands are covered in this and having to apply it multiple times a day in my industry. It just was not practical. Well, I didn't know a lot about what was happening to me at the time. I went to culinary school. I was as far removed away from the medical field as possible. I did know that this wasn't the answer. I knew enough to know, I don't know what the answer is, but this is not the answer. So my sister has always been a great advocate. She's older than me. She is, you need to do this. You need to ask these questions. You need to fight this way. You need to do this. She is a cancer survivor. She's amazing. And she said, here's what you need to do. And she's the one that kind of pushed me. She said, do you have a physician in your circle that you trust completely? And I said, absolutely. And that was my OB that had delivered my son. She'd been with me for long before that. And she was a wonderful, wonderful human being. Always made you feel like you were the only patient for the day. So I went to her and I told her what was happening, even though I knew it wasn't in her wheelhouse. And she's the one that pointed me in the right direction to find somebody that would be compassionate, that would take a good look, that would get to the root of the problem. So
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, that just goes to show how important it really is to number one, have your friends and family, people that you trust in your circle that you can talk to about it. Because not everybody wants to open up and have that conversation, but it gets to that point where you need to lean on your family and your friends and ask them for some help sometimes. And I think that's so important. And the way that they're able to kind of come around you and encourage you and to point you in the right direction, especially your doctor, having that person that you can trust is huge. And that right there alone can deter somebody from going to the doctor to get the treatment and the help that they need.
100%. I could not agree more. And I think that we grow up to trust people in authoritative roles. We grow up to trust people that are doctors, that are nurses, that are mental health professionals or lawyers or members of our church and the elders. And we grow up to respect authority. That's how we were raised. And well, if all of these people that have over a decade of education are saying this to me, but there's a point where you really, really have to question it. It's your own body, it's your own life. You only get
Yeah.
one, you know?
Definitely. You kind of were failed by some of the other providers that you saw. It's really unfortunate, but I'm really glad that you were able to find somebody that actually was able to prescribe you something. So tell me how that ended up coming about and, what difference that made in your quality of life and in your daily activities.
Oh my gosh. It was a 100% game changer with clear communication from her and saying, we will do this together. And she didn't have, this is the perfect answer the first day that I went to her. It was going to be a journey with her, but I felt that she was there for it. She was committed to it. She was feisty and willing to take on insurance companies for me if needed. And she said, this is not okay. This is not okay for you to continue. So it was this pressure,
Mhm.
that just came off of me that you have somebody that is there to help. And she was very honest with the way that insurance companies worked. And I'm blessed that I have very, very good health insurance, but they want to have a system of failures before they move you up to the more expensive ones. So she was very honest. She said that we have to do Humira and we have to do it for this period of time and we have to show failure to your insurance company. I have a feeling this second medication, the one I'm currently on, is going to be the one you need, but we have to show the failure first. She said, here's what we can do to mitigate your symptoms in the meantime. Trust that this is a process and we're going to get you to that end goal. So I knew going into it, and she gave me that clear perspective. And I didn't feel that this was just going to be another drug or treatment that I was trying. And she said, this more than likely will not work. But here's why we're going to do it. Here's how long we have to do it for. And so at that point, I can do anything for a few months, right? So having that clear communication, it meant the absolute world to me. And I've never switched since. She is amazing. I commute an hour and 20 minutes to see her every time I need to go to an appointment. It's very rare that you find physicians and people like that.
You can know right off the bat, like your other appointments that you went to, you left feeling defeated and feeling like you weren't getting the support. But
Mhm.
with that doctor, you left feeling like they understood you and they cared and that they were going to help you. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I mean, sometimes we need that reassurance that, okay, I'm not crazy.
Mhm.
Something's not,
Yeah.
there's something that's not right and it's not me. It's not all in my head. So
Right.
somebody that can reassure you, that is being an advocate for you to really help you understand, okay, this is what is happening and this is why it's happening and this is what we can do. And I may not have all of those answers right up front. And, and that's the truth. That's just really how it is. Unfortunately, with our healthcare system now, we have to do those step therapy requirements. And so it's important for that to be explained. So you're not
Mhm.
thinking, well, why are you giving me something that's not going to work? And you already kind of know that it's not going to work, but not explaining the
Yep.
whole situation. So that clear communication, that's huge.
It made all the difference. And any of these other dermatologists, had they explained that step process to me, I'm here for it. I can do hard things. That's not a problem, but I need to know that we have an end goal and we're going to get there together. So, and that's what she provided me with. So, even though nothing healed during that trial with Humira, I was healed as far as I wasn't stressed. I was okay. I was happy. I was playing with my son. I was going to work because I knew that end game was there. And when we finally went to that next step, 2 weeks later, I start seeing it clear up.
Wow, that's amazing. This episode is sponsored by Dermavant. So now that things have changed and it's gotten better, how does that help you as, I guess, an advocate and helping others? I mean, do you advocate for others? Are you part of any groups? Because I know there's a lot of, National Psoriasis Foundation, and there's all kinds of different like Facebook groups and forums and things like that. Have you gotten into any of that type of thing or communicated with others that are dealing with it?
I have not as far as a national group or anything like that, but I have been very vocal in my own inner circle. Funny when you start talking about things and you start opening up your world and you start saying that, like, this isn't anything I'm ashamed of, this is a medical problem that I had. Because there's a lot of shame that comes with psoriasis specifically.
Yeah, because I mean
So,
it's on your skin. So
yeah,
constantly worried about other people looking at it and wondering, is that contagious? What's going on?
yes, yep,
Have you had
absolutely.
anybody openly say that to you?
Oh gosh, I've had a lot of questions. I've been told that I shouldn't come to work looking like that. I've been asked what's wrong with me, just point blank. I've been asked all sorts of really rude questions. Did I have acid poured on my hands? A lot of really rude questions, but I've also met a lot of people because of it that said, good for you. And here's my story. Because I'm still going to go to work. I'm still going to go to the playground. I'm still going to do all those things. It didn't stop me from living my life. It doesn't define my work ethic or who I am or how I am as a mother by any means. For me, it was really empowering. There was one time, I will admit it, that I did call in sick to work because I woke up and it had crept onto my face. And to me, that was a point when I needed to just like relax, do some treatment.
Mhm.
Your face is another thing altogether. That was a difficult day because that had never happened before. But you process, and luckily I was surrounded by a lot of really good people, and it's ironic that I have a lot of friendships and people that I've met as a result. To answer your question, long story short, yes, a lot of rude questions, but also I've met a lot of really amazing people because of it as well.
That's so good. I mean, I think that there still is a lot of room for awareness and helping others. I don't understand why so many people feel like they can just give their unsolicited advice about things that they know nothing about, especially when it comes to skin conditions. You see so many chronic skin conditions like psoriasis or vitiligo or even eczema, and people just are not informed. It's because they're not informed that they make these weird, rude comments, and it's very unfortunate, but the goal really is to create more awareness around that and to help educate people so that when they do see somebody, don't treat them differently. Some people have to shut off the world and don't go to work and are unable to cope with the stress and the anxiety of dealing with this chronic condition. It's absolutely amazing to hear your story and your journey. And I love that you're able to share that with so many, and becoming an advocate for yourself is the biggest step. Me working in the derm office and with patients, educating and helping them understand what is the next step in the process. That's part of my job is, as a biologic coordinator, is educating patients and really helping them step by step throughout the whole process. It's important because there are so many challenges when it comes to the insurance and the step therapy requirements, or if there is a denial, how we navigate all of that information is so important. And I think having somebody that can help you and walk with you through that is so huge. It's so important.
Absolutely. And kudos to you and your profession, because once I found that dermatologist, my dream dermatologist, and I got in contact with her entire staff, it was like I pictured just the sun opening up. It was so much information and it was so clear. And there's a lot of steps that even to this day, years, later, I'm still navigating, but I have those contacts and I have those resources, and they're so important and helpful. And I think what I've learned is, you kind of hit on it earlier, knowing what questions to ask. And that's where people like you in your profession help so much. Ironically, just earlier today, I had a little bit of a snafu. I get, my Tremfya every 8 weeks. That's what I take. And I went to get my new prescription sent, and they informed me, you have an outstanding balance of over $3,000. I said, what? I've been on the same medication for years. I've never, ever had this issue, because who can afford that? When you hear it, like I said, I have great insurance. There's a lot of people that don't have great insurance. But even with great insurance, my copay is still thousands of dollars. So then you have to have people that inform you of, well, there's this program and there's this copay assistance and you can do this. And it's great, wonderful, awesome. But asking the right questions, that's the one thing I've learned. And just to share a little something just this morning that happened is, when I got that phone call, they said to me, well, you need to call your copay assistance program because it's showing denied. So we can't issue your next round of treatment until that gets paid. And they're super kind. But what I said to them, and I've learned this, is I said, what exactly do you need from them in order to process this? And they gave me a series of questions to ask. Me, 10 years ago, wouldn't have thought to ask that. I would have called them crying and freaking out and what's going on. And I would have been ping-ponging back and forth before I finally got the right answers. So I was able to call them, ask those series of questions, and they said, actually, just a couple months ago, you were moved from a copay assistance to an accumulator plan. So now you have a new ID, group number, BIN number. Here's what they're going to need. Here's the answer to all those questions. Call them back, gets processed. But without me knowing, all I would have heard 10 years ago is, holy crap, I can't pull $3,000, out of nowhere. So it takes a whole team. You have the dermatologist or the rheumatologist, and then you have the coordinators and everybody that helps you find the right questions to ask.
Yeah.
Is critical.
It's so critical. I mean, I deal with that so much, and you wouldn't believe how many patients actually get their medication and then get a bill. And it's absolutely insane. So, knowing what questions to ask, especially to the pharmacy, is huge. They will not apply those copay cards, and then you're left with a bill and you're like, I don't know what to do. But it's good that you were educated and you were, okay, what questions do I need to ask my doctor's office so that we can get this taken care of? Because that is a huge delay in therapy. And then, when you miss a dose, then you're left frustrated and you're like, wait a minute, what's going on? Why is my skin not staying clear? And it's so important to know what questions are needed and necessary, but also know what support you have available as well and who to reach out to. That's huge. Thank you for sharing that. That is a great story, because that is the story of my life. Deal with that every day.
I think that it really translates in life, not just this, it translates into my career, what I do. What are the questions we're asking? Because If we go into it with panic, and if we go into it with fear, we're going to be spinning around in circles a lot longer than necessary. And I think that to give credit and a little nod to the doctors early on, while they didn't help me learn to ask those right questions, they were not 100% wrong that I was in fear because I didn't know the questions to ask.
Well, that being said, what would you say to other patients or somebody that is struggling in this kind of in the same boat?
Don't stop. Don't give up. Keep pushing. And I know how hard it is. I've been in those moments where I've been on my couch crying and thinking, well, it's eventually going to take over my whole body and I'm just going to turn to stone. But there are people out there. There are resources out there. And if you're willing to just try that one more time and find a person that says, hey, let's have a conversation about this. I think that would be my biggest advice. If you find a doctor that is willing to tell you what you're needing and tell you what is required before they're asking you how you're feeling or where you're at, move on to the next doctor. Find a doctor that's going to hear you and listen to you. That would be my biggest advice. I wasted a lot of times not finding the right doctor, not finding that person that's going to listen. Second bit of advice is talk about it. It's not a shame that anybody needs to carry around. The more you talk about it and the more you let go and the more you're open about it, that is healing in itself. Even if you don't have an external showing of it yet, removing the shame from that is massive. Because then we can do hard things. We can go to different doctor's appointments and we can try different things when we're not feeling ashamed and down about it ourselves. The third bit of advice is exercise patience with yourself and your care coordinators, the doctors that you find that are wonderful. Exercise patience and know that nothing happens overnight, but if they are clearly communicating and you are on a path of healing together, trust the process. Trust the process because it does work. It does work.
Thank you. That is so good. Such really good advice. Thank you so much, Kari, for joining me and sharing your journey and your story with us.
Thank you so much. I love being around people like you that offer platforms for this. Thank you so much for taking the time and hearing my story.
Thank you. This episode is sponsored by Dermavant. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me and listening to That's Derm Good. You can expect new episodes of That's Derm Good every week. The podcast is available on your favorite app, including where you're listening right now. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a new episode. Bye.